and at least through Jerome Corsi, the right-wing conspiracy theorist, and on the Trump campaign end, he talked directly to then candidate Trump on June 14th, 2016.
I had to reboot, so
Oh,
in case you tried a few seconds ago and I wasn't there, did you just try right now?
I did. It was just
Oh, well, that's perfect timing. I was just sending you that message saying that. And okay, well, save me the typing. Thank you very much.
There we go. Good deal.
Most excellent. All right. So 1 second. I just need to. I was eating something and I just got the last few little pieces to finish. And it's like Mr. A says, you got to finish. Otherwise you feel unfinished, right?
Absolutely.
Just a bit of leftover tomato, really. There's 3 little pieces, so nothing big.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So I love tomato.
Me too.
Tomato, as we used to say.
Yes, tomato.
Good.
There's very little that I love more than a good summer homegrown tomato.
Exactly right. Salt and pepper.
Yep, exactly.
I'll tell you something really profound. Big secret.
Yes.
All right. Would be nice to share with you when you come visit, but anyway.
Yes.
So, take some fresh cream, just whipping cream, regular cream.
Right.
And then you chop up tomatoes, and you dump them in the cream, and you add lots of salt and pepper, particularly white pepper, but some black pepper too, but you want the white pepper also, preferably both. It is the most unlikely idea. You would think that is just profoundly delicious, but it is unbelievably exquisite. Now you have to put in quite a lot of salt and pepper, more than you would think that. So you have to kind of go by taste, but it usually takes quite a lot more than you would actually think. But it is the most exquisite thing you can possibly imagine if you like tomato.
It sounds delicious.
It's unreal. And it's just such a weird idea. Tomatoes and cream. But man, it's a savory dish. Normally we associate cream with sweet. But man, it's unbelievable. And it just so accentuates the tomato. It's one of my... it's really good. So yeah.
That reminds me of when I was a kid, my mom and grandma used to always make... they'd take whole strawberries and you dip them in sour cream and then in brown sugar. And it sounds weird, but it's really good.
Wow, that is interesting. Yeah, I'm not a great fan of sour cream, but the strawberries and the
sugar,
will offset that, and it just will give a point, a peak
it's
to it.
Good stuff.
Right, but that tomatoes in the cream like that, man, we used to have it as kids, and it was just I never forgotten how exquisite it was.
I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah, I haven't had it for ages, so yeah, definitely something to do. So, all right, very cool. So, on that point about the Adamance,
yes.
Okay, let me just pull that up here real quick.
I loved that quote. That was so timely because we've been talking about that a lot. So
right, and I really like and make an effort to find analogies that are poignant. And there's a relevancy to that, and that have depth of layeredness. And when we think of ourselves, and especially think of plumbing, it's like, kind of stuff that needs to go, but it's kind of messy. And sometimes when they leak, with plumbing, it causes problems elsewhere. So we kind of sometimes look at the wrong thing, but to fix old plumbing, I don't know if you've ever had to actually deal with old plumbing. But if you've had, and you kind of know that, the best thing is just to replace it entirely.
Rip it out,
and usually to rip out the plumbing in an entire house, you kind of have to just replace the whole house, So.
True.
That's really, and the same with foundations, like Ryan. I tell you, I just love this with Ryan. Like something will come to him and it's important and he's got to apply it. And he has this intent to figure it out and apply it. And he gets these profound, magical, very realistic, real life exemplifications. It's too incredible. Like for instance, this thing with the foundation, you must ask him sometime when he's on, like, I'll ask him to retell that story, but it was pertinent at the time, so it might not come out quite the same. But, he was explaining how this thing they had to change the structure, I believe. It was a porch or something, and they had to fix it. But then it found out that the foundation was wrong, and it had this huge foundation, and like way bigger than normal. And you think, well, that should be better. No, it was because it was inappropriately laid, and so they were kind of did it just in a haphazard way. So it was actually worse, not better. So they had to replace the whole thing. Isn't that amazing?
That's very interesting.
It's just unreal. So, but I wanted to come on to something very specific. because it's about an adamance that goes together, and this is a very, very big deal. Just finding it here. All right, so let me screen share. Oh, that sounds exciting. Whatever that is. It's your notepad.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, it is exciting. All right. So next point. You know, it's funny. This post of the Adamance, it's a very big post for me. And I just, the way it came out, it started from a conversation, and I was really thinking about it, and I kind of just added to it more, and it became really an elucidation on the way of impeccability to a large
Yeah.
extent. It's also on the underlyingness of the new nobility, really, because of the capital D diplomacy. So it was very cool. Where is this section now? Where is this section? Here we go. Okay. So as part of this, we have to have an adamance on understanding and communicating the problems inherent with assumption. We have to be adamant on making sure we don't fall into its traps, and be adamant in communicating when we are forced to assume. Assuming is unavoidable, and our adamance in pointing out when we have to, and that our assumptions are always suspect, goes a long way in communicating our intent to goodness and to diplomacy.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the key. I want to connect to that. There was lots of the earlier stuff, but it brings up this next paragraph here. We have to adamant thus about giving the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. But we are adamant also. This is the key. This is the key point. So I want to connect this to your adamance about being good. Your adamance about adjusting, your adamance about learning, your adamance about learning new skills, your adamance about practice, right? Your adamance about application. Okay. Now, in the same token, when we have this adamance on giving the benefit of the doubt, this is the point that I want to connect it to. That yes, give a dog a good name and they'll try and live up to it. That's the usual thing. So we come into an interaction, especially with just with everybody pretty much, but especially with new people. We say, our default understanding is that we just are adamant that you have a deep underlying intent to goodness, and we are going to be adamant on focusing on your goodness and just focusing on that alone and bringing it to the fore. And with us in our interaction, as far as we're concerned, you're just a good person, and we focus on your good qualities. And that we are taking this whatever percentage in you, and we're going to treat it as the whole, or as 99%. Yes, we know this other stuff, and you know this other stuff, but we're going to treat you as if this is your entirety. So that's very profound, right? Just there, that alone is massively transformative. However, there's a however to be on top of that, right? This is the point that I want to really, really kind of emphasize with you. I did post that paragraph, but to bring it into being, to say that these are coexistent adamances. Right. So this is very important. So we have that, but at the same time, we are also going to be adamant. Yes, we give you the benefit of the doubt. Yes, we have extreme tolerance. Yes, we have extreme patience. Yes, we have extreme giving the benefit of the doubt. And we are going to let you work your things out. We're going to let you vent if you need to vent. We're going to let you get your things out of the way, and all your misassumptions, all of the stuff. We're going to do this profound capital D diplomacy. At the same time, we are going to be right. So this is this bottom. So we have adamance thus about always giving the benefit of the doubt as much as is possible. But we are adamant also that abuse and willful distortion will not be accepted or tolerated. We are adamant as a core principle of our diplomacy that our intent to goodness will never be exploited. We are adamant thus on standing firm on our core principles of tolerance and goodness. We are adamant also that we will not be bullied or taken advantage of. This too is an adamance on our integrity and impeccability. It is core to capital D diplomacy. So this is really
Absolutely.
profound. So, in this, I was writing, thinking of the new nobility, because in that mythology, they are the de facto, or at least they get employed to be the diplomatic corps because they are so profoundly good at it. But one thing that you go into the negotiations, just as a starting point, these guys have, and women, guys is, multi anyway,
Yes.
they
Yeah.
have they have profound integrity, and then they have profound patience, and they have profound discipline, and they have profound goodness, and they assume you are good. But with all their goodness, you can't push them about. You can't bully them,
Right.
you can't take advantage of them, you can't exploit them. So forget about even trying that. Not going to work, because then you're going to just run into a brick wall and say, no, we're not going to end the negotiations, but they ain't going to work with us. Just not going to.
Right.
So yes, as long as you are negotiating in good faith with good intent, cool.
Hmm.
And it's not just negotiating, but everything in life is kind of a negotiation in a way,
True.
right?
True.
So when it comes to like at your work and interacting with all of the people in that, it's about saying that, hey, our interactions, they are taken on this, that there is good faith, that you have a legitimate agenda. The moment
Yeah.
you reveal that you do not have legitimate agenda, and you make it clear that you have an exploitive agenda, that you're trying to take advantage of my
Hmm.
goodness, to manipulate my goodness, to abuse my goodness, I'm sorry, then no more. That's it. Then
Yeah.
that's right there where we hit a very big pause. Now, it doesn't necessarily end things, but we're not going to progress until that changes, because that cannot be there. It's not going to happen. Now, we might end up continuing in our negotiations, and you can try all you like to abuse and manipulate and take advantage, but it's not going to help you. It's not going to get you.
Hmm.
It's going to be absolutely a waste of time. So it doesn't necessarily end things, but it's very clear that this ain't going to work.
Right.
And that's very, very important, because if we're not adamant on that, we can be taken advantage of inadvertently.
Hmm.
And this is a very big point. And abusers and manipulators, the BMNs in our Out BS book, they are very acutely aware of this. For instance, one
Absolutely.
way they will do this is to exploit our goodness in terms of not saying something controversial. And they'll say,
Hmm.
oh, yeah, Erica, I'm sure you'll agree. And Erica,
Yes.
well, no,
Yep.
I'm not agreeing to that, but it's in a business meeting and you don't have the
Yep.
opportunity to say that. So now your goodness just gets abused. But we
Absolutely.
have to say, I'll say, no, sorry, that's not so. We can say it nicely and position, say, no, not actually. All right, it's very gentle, but they know, don't try that again, because if you do try
Hmm.
it again, I'm going to say, no, absolutely not. Don't count me in, don't assume, don't speak for me, because you're just trying to leverage my agreement inadvertently, and you're going to really
Right.
spell it out, and you're going to really point it out. So, you're going to see your ass in this, in other words, and make a fool of yourself. I'm going to call you on it. But the first time you can say, no, not actually, doesn't apply to me. I think it's kind of casual, like no big deal. But everybody knows what's going on, and they likely won't try it again. But we have to be very adamant on that, because otherwise, that
Hmm.
inadvertent manipulation of our goodness, because they know good people don't want to make a scene, they don't want to object, they don't want to say anything,
Yep.
they don't want to look
Yep.
unpopular, all that shit. No. So we have to pick our battles where it comes to adamance, and be
Yeah.
adamant about what really matters. The moment we aren't adamant about essentially what's our integrity, then
Hmm.
we cross that line in the same way as they do, crossing the line into lack of integrity. We are no different to them in essence, right? And they
It's true.
realize that, say, hey, you know what? I see, yes, you're Muscuri two shoes and all of this, and you have integrity, but you actually are prepared to cross that line. I got
Right.
you now. And they will really exploit that, and they will really manipulate and pressure you to say, yeah, you kind of make out like you're so good and all, but I really know the truth. And then they really like work this angle and kind of
Yep.
exploit it. So no, that's very important. Otherwise we
So
really
true.
open the door. We really open the door. So I just wanted to make this point, because I really do feel that, you are adamant about your goodness. It's just to kind of have that as a concrete deliberation to do so in full
Absolutely.
awareness, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I struggle with, I mean, I don't struggle with recognizing
Right,
when a line has been crossed, but
right.
historically in the past, I have struggled with knowing how to say
Yeah,
that's a line and don't cross it
right,
without being,
right,
confrontational or whatever.
right,
So that's something I'm still
right.
really working on, is how to say that in a kind of diplomatic
Yeah,
way without
yeah.
it being confrontational or disrespectful.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Yeah.
This point of capital D diplomacy, it's kind of why there's not a module or a session on it in the way of impeccability, because it's such a huge thing and it's kind of its own course, really.
Yeah.
And what makes it something very special is that, or different in this context. Sorry, I just want to minimize my windows. For some reason, we got lag going on here.
Oh.
Well, I just rebooted, so a lot of these windows are still open. I haven't minimized them yet, but it's making me kind of be in slow motion here, which is kind of cool. But anyway, in terms of capital D diplomacy, it's a very deep skill. It's a very, very big skill. So, it's over and above the way of impeccability. It's the actual, the details of it. It's very finely nuanced, and it's not an easy thing to learn. It's a difficult skill, right? Because it's so situational, and each time it requires, a preciseness and a finesse. So it's a deep skill, and it's a very, thing has to be learned over time. It's not something one can deal with quickly. So the biggest thing in this is, just from a kind of, we'll come back to capital D diplomacy on a regular basis, because it's something that's of profound interest to you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And it's also the communication and the skill to communicate appropriately.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So and capital D diplomacy, it's the balancing of all the entirety of everything in a profound consideration.
Okay.
That's actually the end of that article. I wrote kind of a comment there well, it was originally in just a comment I made in comments, and then I added it to the post itself. Just to say, I'll read it to you here real quick, just to give an idea where I'm going with this. All right. Oh, where's this now? Yeah. So added in a comment. So this entire article, this is about diplomacy, capital D diplomacy, which is me taking diplomacy deeper, regular diplomacy deeper, as deep as I can. This applies to all the other capitalized concepts in the article also. But the focus here is on capital D diplomacy, which is taking it to a lifestyle, a way of being that leads to grace, a way of being for daily interaction. Because also capital D diplomacy is an extension of regular diplomacy, the obvious aspects of diplomacy are taken for granted and not mentioned. Sorry, I read the emphasis wrong there. Because capital D diplomacy is an extension of regular diplomacy, the obvious aspects of diplomacy are taken for granted and not mentioned, such as courtesy, respect, politeness, graciousness, etc. Some of these, as good as they are, can be problematic in certain circumstances and thus are not mentioned specifically. As the key is that when applying the core abstract elements of diplomacy, the typical aspects of diplomacy will automatically be applied as appropriate. One moment. I forgot to screen share. For me, I like to read along. I don't know if you like it as well, but
I do, yeah.
Okay. So let me, I'll just start again. Because also diplomacy is an extension of capital D diplomacy, extension of regular diplomacy, the obvious aspects of diplomacy are taken for granted and not mentioned, such as courtesy, respect, politeness, graciousness, etc. Some of these, as good as they are, can be problematic in certain circumstances and thus are not mentioned specifically. As the key is that when applying the core abstract elements of capital D diplomacy, the typical aspects of regular diplomacy will automatically be applied as appropriate. Besides, it seems to me that the common perception of regular diplomacy has become corrupted, and there are many negative associations with it, such as appeasement, mollycoddling, lying, or saying whatever is needed, and so on. These aspects are most absolutely not part of capital D diplomacy and are indeed completely counter to it and counterproductive besides. It is inherent in capital D diplomacy that those easy ways, those shortcuts, are never ever taken, for they are against the core principles and they always cause long-term problems also. I think this is what I wanted to come on.
Yeah.
This is the capital D diplomacy of dealing with loved ones, co-workers, friends, and of course, it would be excellent in the usual regular diplomacy areas also. It is geared to enabling us to deal with stress and difficulty, and even minor issues that irritate and annoy, in ways and with tools that do not escalate, in
Mm.
ways that do not create future problems, and in ways that maximize goodness, in ways that are all happy, and in ways where we do not lose ourselves.
Mhm.
Diplomacy is capital D. Diplomacy is thus a lifestyle, a continuous mindset and way of being, not just something we adopt. It is always in play. Maximizing goodness in every aspect of our lives and our living is thus the purpose of capital D diplomacy. And capital D diplomacy is the abstract mindsets and conceptions that allow us to get to that place of being, that allows us to enable, express, and apply that core of goodness that is really us. So it's going beyond, it's going further,
Mhm.
it's doing more than that's what's needed. And that's kind of what I wanted to communicate. It's we don't need to apply capital D diplomacy, but it's something that we do because there's more. And that's kind of
Mhm.
huge in that sense.
Yeah.
So it's pretty big deal. In that instance that you were saying that you don't always know how to say it exactly,
Mhm.
express,
Yeah.
this is what I wanted to share. I thought it was in that comment, but I guess not. It is that we can use force of awareness.
Mm. Yeah.
Force of awareness is a very, very powerful concept. It's non-obvious, but it's there. Okay, so you get somebody who comes into the office and you can see they're walking around and literally you can see it in their physicality that they have something on their mind, right?
Mhm.
It's like they're carrying this burden on their forehead here. Now, in the same way, if somebody's annoyed, you can kind of clearly see it. Now, I'm not talking about emotions though, but sometimes you can see when somebody's got a focus, like they got a big
Mhm.
on it, or they focused on, they come into the office and they got an agenda. I'm going to stand up for myself today. You can kind of see it in the force of their awareness, right? And you
Yeah.
can see it.
Yeah.
So when we are very clear and we kind of bring it to I call it the forefront of our awareness. It's very literally taking things that are kind of there and you almost literally bring it to this front brain right here. It's actually kind of a literal process because this is, the frontal cortex, but you really keep it here. It's like you're keeping it in your RAM in your computer. You're keeping it front and center. And this becomes very profound in terms of affecting things that you want to say but don't have the words for.
Mhm.
So bringing that into the forefront of your awareness, like, hey, you know what? My goodness is not going to be abused and exploited. I'm not going to be taken advantage of because I'm good. Now, you add to that the capital D diplomacy caveat to say, hey, I might not always express myself clearly and succinctly and appropriately, but I'm making an effort. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to do
Yeah.
it. So just, give me space. So you put all of that in there, and it is quite ridiculously profound in its communicative effect. It's really profound. So when we realize
Absolutely.
that we can communicate things non-verbally just by bringing them to the forefront of our awareness,
True.
very profound. I
Yeah.
mean, when you speak to people sometimes that they can't say, they don't want to say what they have to say, but you know exactly what the hell they're thinking. It's very obvious.
Right. Yeah. It's
So
true.
we can use that in the same way, and then of course just cueing with our mood and our attitude. When we
Mhm.
really take all of capital D diplomacy and this adamance to heart, like every single aspect to it. I mean, this is a course right on its own, adamance right here. I mean,
True.
one article, but if you go through this in all of the key points here, like and having an adamance, just scrolling through this, and adamance on effort, and adamance on giving the benefit of the doubt, and adamance on application, and adamance on paying attention to implication. So they're all key points. They are key points for the dictionary of power. So that's
Mhm.
a very big thing. But I just wanted to make that one point that that as much as you have an adamance on good communication, appropriate
Mhm.
communication, good interaction, and giving the benefit of the doubt, and
Right.
adamance, in other words, on intent to goodness and giving that goodness to ascribing it to others,
Yeah.
that has to go together with an adamance on not being taken advantage of, abused, exploited,
Absolutely.
etc. And I think that was kind of a key part that was perhaps missing. That adamance, yes, it's by implication there, but not the adamance on it. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Right. And further, the adamance on integrity.
Mm.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Bina, when we went over this article with Adamance, Bina was all excited. She says, you just solved a big mystery for me. And it was that Father died when she was 5, but she has really incredible memories of him, and he stayed in her life and in her family and extended family's lives, because he was quite the guy. He was essentially a new noble, essentially. But he was a very a nice man, and everybody loved him. And he was not an aggressive man. He was a gentleman, a true gentleman. And but also, she said, when he said no, and he never said no in a firm, aggressive, way. He just, when somebody wanted, when he said no, it was no, and they never
Right.
ever pushed him on it. And this always used to, like, the kids would talk about it, and even people long after he was dead, they would mention this. It always amazed them how this was so. And she
Interesting.
yeah, he's been dead, what, 25 years or something?
Right.
It's quite incredible, right? And it's still a factor for her and in her family too. And actually, the siblings would discuss this. She said, how come Papa would say no, and it was never a problem, people really, like, that was it, because of his adamance. And then I explained, there's a lot more going on here. He wasn't just being adamant about the point. It was because whatever it was now touching upon his integrity. For him to now agree to that and say, undo the no, would be in the same way as him saying, my integrity doesn't matter, let me throw that out. In other words, I have to throw my entire life out. That's not going to happen. It's just impossible. So he was connecting it, and there was a lot more that went into it. But just that connection, that our adamants are not being abused, not doing crap and nonsense, it's connected to our integrity, which is connected to our deep, real self. So if you're asking me to be abused and exploited and manipulated and taken advantage of, you might as well ask me to commit suicide. It's the same point. It's spiritual suicide, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is a huge key point, and that came up with her father, when she realized that, oh my goodness, he was quite sophisticated, a lot more than she realized. She always knew he was a sophisticated guy, but that even more so. And there were other points. You'll have to ask Bina about it when she comes on again.
That's really interesting.
It's a cool story. It's a very cool story. Her connection of adamance to her father. When you hear all of the detail to it, there's a lot to it. So I was very excited.
It's very cool.
Excited.
Yeah.
But when we think of this as an adamance on our integrity and on our impeccability, it's a whole different deal, right? So
absolutely.
The takeaway on this is that when it comes to adamance, we have to be extremely judicious about what exactly we are being adamant about.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, don't make a stand if you're not willing to essentially die for it.
Yeah.
That's it. In his case, this was it. You're asking me to throw my life away. I can't do that. Sorry. I don't care how much you flipping will stand on your head and whistle through your ass, as we used to say. It's not going to matter. Nothing you can say. I can't throw away my life. So we really have to be very clear about when we are adamant and connected to that. So then it's not a bullshit thing. It's I'm just being adamant for my personal gain or to get my way or any stupid nonsense like that. No, this is a real thing. And when people see that, man, you really, really mean this, there's no possibility of even arguing. And that's the thing with her father. He just communicated it through his presence. It wasn't, he didn't even to bring it to the forefront of his awareness and use force of awareness. It was just through his entire being. And here's the key, though. We tend to think in cases like that adamance is actually something that you kind of have to express. There's an assumption maybe that you have to say it adamantly. Oh, no. Absolutely not. I don't drink alcohol, and not that I have anything against alcohol. I just don't like it personally. It doesn't work for me. It has an adverse effect. It's a negative experience. So, and I grew up in a very strong alcohol drinking community. Big thing.
Yeah.
So of course, at some point, now I used to drink, when I was at school and that, but eventually I got less and less tolerance for it, and eventually I just couldn't anymore. But anyway, at some point, you go to people and you visit, and and there's okay, they're all drinking, and now they want to say, and I say, no thanks. Come on, man, have a drink. And then I just say, no, thank you. It doesn't work for me.
Right.
And that's it. It has the opposite effect. But I'm saying it in a very casual, quiet, relaxed way. But in that casual communication, because you are saying something in a very definitive way, but so casually, they get to realize that, I don't need to push on this because I'm not going to get anywhere. So the casualness kind of actually
that's
adds
interesting.
to the emphasis, because when you when they say she doth protest too much, there's something going on. So Shakespeare was quite the psychologist.
Yes.
And so when we realize that sometimes when you just say it in that very casual, relaxed way, but you're not being defensive, you're not being apologetic, you're not being in any way adding to it, you're just stating it as fact. No thanks, doesn't work for me. Now I've given an out to say, doesn't work for me, I don't enjoy it. There you go. I don't even have to do that. That's capital D diplomacy, but just in that casual, no thanks, or not right now, or whatever. The casualness has power to it, is what I'm trying to say. That, Adamance is a different deal. It is an inner point of knowledge that I know. I don't care what you do. I can't drink it because it's going to make me bloody ill. I don't care what you say. It's not going to happen. So when they realize that, and it's by implication too, we are all geniuses at implication. So when I say no thanks, doesn't work for me, the implications coming through in that connectivity by implication, well, it makes me sick, it makes me ill, or whatever. I don't have to say that, but they pick up on it, and people pick up on the deeper implications. So this is a really profound thing to realize also, that we don't always have to say everything, that people pick up on the implications. So in a way, we are all kind of psychic, but not really, because we are such geniuses at listening. We've already heard stuff 1,000 times. So we have this ability to put two and two together. Yes, it's a probable thing, but it has a high probability. And we all have this expertise because implications was part of our DNA. It's what's kept us alive over the centuries.
True.
But to build that into our communication, not just on being adamant, but also in our actual expression. So when in doubt, assume people are going to know what you mean and say less rather than more.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And why? Why is that really powerful from just a strategy point of view? Never mind capital D diplomacy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like when you say, "Oh, have you seen this?" or "Do you know about whatever the thing is?" Right? Do you know who Neil Goddard is? I don't care if you don't know who he is. I can just say, "Oh, I see this quote, Manifest," or something else by Neil Goddard. Okay, so I don't have to say, "Oh, Erica, do you know who Neil Goddard is?" Now, if you do know who he is, what have I achieved? Nothing. I've just wasted a whole sentence, right? And then too, if you have a bit of ego, you say,
right.
"Well, I do know he is, but the fact that you assumed I didn't is bothersome to me."
Right.
Now, if you didn't know who he is and you do have ego, you still get the same problem of the ego. So there's absolutely no value in saying extra things. So if you're not sure if somebody knows, assume they do. Because, of course, now they like it that you assume they do. And hey, if they now, if they're so egotistical and they don't want to ask, well, actually, no, I don't know who it is, then, well, too bad. You're just going to lead them to the things. You're also going to know who really is. And later on, you'll typically usually find out that they have no clue what you're talking about, and then you can elaborate. So you just pay attention. You can usually see when you say and you just take it for granted, you can actually, if you're paying attention, if you're hearing and listening while you're talking, you can actually see how they respond to it. And then you can see, oh, they don't actually know. And then you can kind of subtly and gently bring in later on, say, Neil Goddard is like, make it personal. I know he's somebody who's really important to me because his thesis on diplomacy was something really influential. And he was one of the leaders in that field. So this really impacted me. I'm now saying it for me as it's indirect communication of that.
Absolutely.
So that indirectness, it's always very appreciated. You're saying things for you personally, and you're just making an example of him, why it was important, why he was important to you, because he's an authority. But you indirectly communicating that he is an authority.
Right. Yeah.
So indirectness like that, in earnest capital diploma, is just a skill we have to learn and practice. And so we'll make an effort also to practice it in the takeaway sessions. Yeah.
I like that.
And when capital D diplomacy is applied, to say, there you go, capital D diplomacy, and to start emphasizing it. It's very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, just in terms of, I was thinking of that, you were saying in terms of how you express yourself, you were getting feedback that you say things that are redundant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just like elaborating too much or explaining too much. Yeah.
Right. So, were you there when Ryan was reading his takeaways?
No.
So Ryan read his takeaways and he put them into quote format. And it was very cool. So he read the quotes and then he wanted to elaborate. I cut him off every time. I said, no. All we want to hear is the quotes because they were enough. They were self-explanatory.
Right.
You need to do that. So this necessity to explain the obvious, I'm not really sure what the basis for it is. It's a very peculiar thing, and it's just a kind of an odd habit that we have to get out of.
Right.
And we just have to assume that people understand.
Yeah. I really like that. I was actually talking with, I went to a therapy session earlier this week, and we were talking about all of this stuff because of my conversations with you, and it was on my mind. And we were talking about that and about over-explaining. And I said, I kind of think it comes from needing acceptance and trying to unintentionally force people to see
Excuse me 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's you, gorgeous. Just a second. Somebody coming in the door, so make sure it's.
Oh, good. Almost an unintentional way of trying to force someone else to see my intent to goodness, like to see that my intention is good and to see things from my side. And so, I'm realizing that that's coming from that place, and that's not really a good place for it to be coming from.
No, and also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And also there's an additional intent that usually goes alongside of that. And that is the intent to explain our own complexity and the marvelousness and wonderfulness and genius of what we've just said. Now, okay, I'm exaggerating and elaborating.
Right.
But that's also the same problem. This is like really important, and then you try to explain to it's important. You don't trust people to get it. But now, and this is what I wanted to recommend as an exercise, to write your takeaways as quotes.
Yeah, I like that.
Right. Get into that habit of quotifying your takeaways. Because there's a bunch of things. This is one of those multi-layered exercises that have multiple benefits. I just love it. It's really, really fantastic. All right. So first thing that you're going to have to do when you write your thing as a takeaway, as a quote, you're going to have to write it as a somewhat impersonal point. It's a standalone. Good quotes don't, like, this is my opinion that this is so. They have a self-evident sensibility to them, right? They kind of have a completeness to them. Like in that case with the plumbing quote, right?
Right.
It's a self-evident sensibility. And also, they have a cogency to them and a coherency, right? They are kind of tight, right? And also, they typically have that profoundness of implication in the way that they're written, right? Furthermore, a good quote is what I like to call a fractal conception. In other words, you got a lot packed into it, and with a bit of attention to it, when you kind of think it through, you see all of the, like when you start a fractal pattern more, and it gets all complicated, right? So it's a good quote is in essence then, thus, a self-telling story.
I love that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. A cabinet file, in other words.
Yeah.
Right? It unpacks itself. Right.
Yeah.
All you need to do is pay a little bit of attention, and you get this moreness from it. So now when you have your takeaway, you have your understanding of the entirety of everything, you keep condensing it, and you pack it into this fractal conception. And if you look, especially today with all of the memes and stuff going out there, we've kind of become experts at quotes. Mary, she posts 100 memes a day. And if you listen to all of her comments, and when she makes a comment in Facebook, she actually is in meme speak already in that way. She speaks in meme form. It's quite amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I actually want to get Mary to start making her own memes.
That would be awesome.
Postings. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is very awesome. She sort of just, in what she says there, they are just reflections and a little bit of a regurgitations of the general memes. If she starts making an effort to make her own memes, that stuff is going to stick with her.
Right. Yeah.
So this is the other point. When we start self-quoting, it changes our perception on ourselves.
True. Yeah.
Right. So self-quoting is a superpower. All right. So the additional benefits beside the condensation of your is Joe having an S&M session, by the way? That's what it sounds like.
He's trying to get the dogs to come inside.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I'm easy.
Oh,
Whatever
dear.
you into, so
Oh,
I
dear.
figured that would be amusing. So I'm not sure how amusing Joe would find it, but anyway.
Oh,
I mean, the
dear.
sounds do kind of have it. I couldn't quite
Yes.
figure out what it was.
Oh, that's too funny.
Anyway, um, beside the value of self-quoting to to absolutely condense our thinking and clarify it and get to the essence of it and to put it in a format where you can tell that story automatically. That's a profound skill, that condensation skill, right? And also quotes have a balance to them, right? And a magic to them. And they
Mm-hmm.
have a profundity. So you are locking it in a way that has this profound connection, and it's a mnemonic. That's the thing with the quotes, right? They automatically, what makes a good quote is that mnemonic effect that it has. It's memorable, in other words. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So when you start to do this, you are now also leveraging the pertinence and relevance and emphasis, of course, and you're making it
Mm-hmm.
memorable, which it stays with you. So now that entire house and this iceberg and the iceberg on all of that stuff, one quote can encapsulate all of that. And when it's
Yeah.
our own, oh my God, it becomes so profoundly meaningful. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're really simple, like without application, it's all meaningless. It's a
Right.
simple quote for me, but it stays with me. And it's something now that I live by and becomes part of my deep DNA, as it were, my core instructions.
Yeah.
There's an extra benefit.
Okay.
Oh, there's always more. And in the context of what we are working on specifically right now, which is Erica's communication.
Mm-hmm.
When you start making your takeaways in quotable forms, and I would absolutely encourage you to read them out loud, right? Because a quote that you can't read out loud, forget it, it's a waste of time.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so always read them out loud and read them to somebody so that they can become part of your speech.
Mm.
So now, when you're sitting in the meeting and you're thinking the whole thing through, and you're doing a takeaway inside your head of the whole meeting and everything, you now put all your takeaways into these quotes, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can actually say them. Now, when you start speaking in quotes, this is a profound change of self, right?
Yeah.
Now, all of that extra information, you're going to realize it's not necessary. I just need to give the quote.
Right.
There's another thing that comes into it, and there's probably a linguistic terminology for it. I just call it queuing, but this is specific audio queuing, right? In
Yep.
terms of the lilts, we spoke about this before. When
Yep.
you say something as a quote and you just read it as an ordinary thing, and you just say, "Where's that quote now? I need a quote. I need a quote." Uh, I want to find a quote to illustrate with here. So, uh, I'm looking for that plumbing quote now, but I don't know where.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So if I just say, we don't need to fix the plumbing if we replace the entire house, it still kind of has power. But if I said, we don't need to fix the plumbing if we replace the entire house, there's an
Mm-hmm.
extra added emphasis. Now
Right.
it's that emphasis. And then you see, because I finished an entire house, and then I kind of leave it, and I could say, now I started speaking immediately after that. But when I say something generally, if you say something that's meaningful, let's say, hey, here's something that for me is very meaningful. There's usually you put it out there and you kind of do the mic drop and you walk away.
Right. Yeah.
Right now, in a conversational way, but you leave that pause afterwards. Say, there it is, and you're putting it out there. That was now, because of the cueing, that audio pattern of speaking, it's taken, this was something that has a bit more to it. Kind of,
Right.
what was that again? And then, the people replay it in their mind. So we can cue people as how to listen to us. And this
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
very profound. This is
Yeah.
very profound. So if you start paying attention to speakers and those who get listened to, you'll hear how they cue people to actually respond and to take what they say as being valuable, and it changes
Mm-hmm.
their ears. So it's very much in the pattern of the delivery also.
Absolutely.
And again, this is why cueing is so, so huge.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
right. And when we learn to self-quote, right, you've taken what you've said and you've thought it through to the end. That's always all caps, the to the end. It's very important. You've thought it through. You've given it space. You've gone over it and backwards and forwards. You've packed it in. You have mastery of that point in that quote. You know what it means, what it stands for. If somebody say, oh, what do you mean by that? You can explain, right? So now you have this total confidence in what you're saying too. And that too gets communicated. You're almost inviting somebody to ask you, oh, what do you mean by that? Thank you. I'm glad you asked. And, get the eager rubbing of the hands. All right. Sit yourself down. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm just saying though, but you're inviting it, which now also is a cueing that here's something you're saying and you're inviting more, which means you really know what you're talking about. Now they might not ask more because it's kind of obvious, but it's the cueing of the confidence and it's the cueing of the depth. So it just gives us that, hey, we're really thinking about things. And just in general, Erica, you really do think about things very deeply, very profoundly. Your takeaways are absolutely magnificent. I mean, they're really excellent. So I think just that awareness that, hey, I actually do know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't justify it. And this is the thing. I think you're a little frustrated that people don't really realize that you do get it. But it's simply because of the cueing.
Yeah.
That's it. It's this inverse, peculiar kind of a self-defeating feedback loop. Right. It's based on nothing more than that simple fact that you're cueing this, that you're unsure that they get it, and then they think, well, if she's unsure that I get it, then she's unsure that she expressed it clearly, and just expectations and all that. So this is what bullshitters use this in the negative. They communicate as if they know, and people listen to them.
Yes, absolutely.
Bullshitters, but we can learn from them.
Yes.
I mean, their communication skills are quite exquisite.
Right. It's true.
And the cueing skills are quite exquisite. Now, if we can use their communication and their cueing skills, especially their cueing skills, to positive good effect, that's most awesome, right?
Absolutely.
So this is quite, and again, we have to be very careful with cueing and to realize that, because we are sharing something freely and we are not forcing anything, our cueing is the sharing of options. And it's the sharing of our opinion. And this we can now do thus ethically and with impeccability. Right?
Yeah,
and we're also cueing our confidence in our own point. So we can be at ease with this. I'm not forcing anybody. I'm not manipulating anyone. None of that shit. No, I'm being real me. Yeah, and this is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very important. All right, brilliant. On that, we'll let you go sleep because it's late. But before you go, just kind of an overall takeaway of it all, just kind of wrap it all up, put it all together.
Oh man, I think to me, the biggest idea is the appropriate application of confidence and communication.
Right. And by being adamant that you won't be abused, right?
Yes,
or
absolutely.
taken advantage of, manipulated, exploited, bullied, etc.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also simply that self-acknowledgement that, hey, Erica, I do know what I'm talking about generally.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
And just cue that and say, hey, I'm going to give you the condensation. If you want more, you ask.
Yeah.
Right. Our goodness tends to give people the full explanation because we want to be thorough, but it's inappropriate application of thoroughness.
Yeah.
I have a fun little story about being thorough just to leave you with. Right. So we can inappropriate application of goodness is thoroughness. So Johnny's mom says to him, Johnny, you need to be thorough. Thoroughness is a very good quality. Always got to be thorough. In everything you do, got to be thorough. Okay. A little while later says, ambition is also a good thing, Johnny. It's good to have some ambition in your life. Okay. All right. So Johnny goes away and says, okay, I want to be ambitious. So he says, you know what, Mom? I want to be the hall monitor. You said I must be ambitious. Okay. Mom's a bit disappointed. Oh, well, you gotta be a little bit more ambitious than that. She says, well, okay, he sees that. So you're like, oh, yeah, I got to be thorough. All right. So he comes back a little bit. He says, okay, Mom, I want to be, I don't know, president of the school society. His mom he says, Johnny, really, be a bit more. Johnny goes back and thinks, I need to be thorough. Anyway, so he keeps going with this, and he goes to be mayor, and he goes to this, and each time his mom's a little disappointed. But in the story, when he gets up to like, I don't know, state senator or something, his mom is like, okay, don't overreach now. It's like, okay, and then you get to know what your mom really thinks of you. But that's a separate story. Anyway, so as Johnny goes along, eventually he kind of clicks to what his mom is after. Be a bit more ambitious. Says, all right, mom, I got it now. I finally figured out like what I want to be, and I've taken my ambition and I've been very thorough with it, and say I want to be God. So, okay.
Oh God.
But you get the point of thoroughness now,
Yes.
So
that's
it can be a bit
right.
peculiar in its application.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. So when we realize that thoroughness is a good thing, but it can be inappropriate. It's pretty big.
Absolutely.
I love
That's
that.
big.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the whole story is a long story with Johnny. I just as he sort of as he goes through it, he realizes what his mom actually really thinks of him. When he starts getting to senator or president's, like, yeah, okay, Johnny, get all your stuff.
That's enough. Yeah.
That's enough, right? But that's a big deal, in terms of over-explaining and doing that in our thoroughness. To
absolutely
rather give less than more, and make them
Yes.
come to you with the questions rather than give them all up front. So, if you want
absolutely.
more, I'm here for more, and just cue that there is more, and
Right.
cue that if you want more, come and ask. That's it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I take it for granted you understand. Now I'm queuing that you do understand. And
Right.
if not, you come and ask. That's fine too. That queuing, that sophistication of queuing and the nonverbal communication, it's not obvious to logical minds. And you do have a logical mind. So some things are just in that sphere of the unobvious, the illogical, and we have to just be aware of it. Yeah?
Right. Absolutely.
All right. Very good.
Absolutely.
Very good, very good. I love it, Erica. I really enjoy these, even if they for a short time, anytime.
Me too. There's always a ton of information packed in, even when they're short. So I always love it. There's always nuggets.
It's because everything is connected.
Yes.
So especially now in the early days of our communications, there's lots of stuff coming in. Later on, it won't seem like it's so much because the connections will already be made. But each time, it's the connectivity. And in the end, all the things mean the same, which is very exciting.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, so true.
Yeah. It's amazing how they all mean the same. Just on that point real quick. If you take like in that A+ philosophy, the way of impeccability mind map, and you say, look, awareness, appropriateness, attunement, application, all of those, take them to their ultimate. Ultimate awareness is the same thing as ultimate appropriateness. It's the same thing as ultimate attunement. It's the same thing as ultimate application. It's the ultimate perspective shift. It's just they're all the same in the end. So
yeah,
just different angles,
cool.
which is why I like my background. They all enter there eventually.
I love it.
Good night, Erica.
Thank you so much, Sil. It's good to
ballet
talk to
tomorrow,
you.
and if you're in the car. If you're in the car, again, just click on the link and just see if we're still on or not.
Awesome.
Either way, before, after, it's always good. So, yeah.
I will do it. Awesome.
Sleep well,
Thank you so
and
much.
just make sure Joe didn't hurt himself.
I will check in.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.